Welcome to FO Talks. With me is Russell Stamitz, a lawyer with over 2 decades of experience helping global conglomerates do business in India. He has spent so much time in India that he now plays cricket and is the president of the American Cricket Club of India. Russell, welcome to Fair Observer.
Thanks so much, Rohan. Pleasure to be here.
So, you've spent 20 years in India advising companies from both sides. What's the biggest misconception Americans still have about doing business in India?
Uh, American companies in particular are very binary. Either India is horrible and impossible and completely corrupt, or everything's been fixed. Everything's fine. We got a nod. Brad is setting up a factory in Ranchi. Why don't we go? Everybody has to be there. So the American companies are very, very much like, it's terrible, no one will go there, or everybody has to be there. And so it's always terrible, and it's always a great time to do business in India. It's been here for 5,000 years. Anybody sitting around waiting for that opportune moment is just silly. And the American companies in particular that come and set up and wait that out, they do well. But the number one thing is like, it's terrible or everything's solved. That's the primary challenge.
How's it for Indian companies? How do they see doing business with America?
So I had some very, very interesting conversations recently with the tariff issue, and the thing that Indian clients stress to me, particularly those in manufacturing who export, is that the U.S. hands down gives Indian companies the best margins of any market. I had somebody tell me, wait, when he saw that he thought I wasn't understanding correctly, he said, look, 60% of my customers are German. He said, Germans. And still, he said, still, the U.S. offers the best margins. And so this came up in the context of the idea that was going around Delhi at the time, saying basically kind of a Moneyball approach to replacing the U.S. Like, maybe we can't replace the U.S., but maybe if we take 3 Burundis, 5 Guianas, half of Sri Lanka, close our eyeball and do Croatia, well, in the aggregate, we'll be able to replace that. And that was the political answer to that, and that was a public statement by a lot of Indian corporates. But the quiet statement from actual manufacturers doing actual business was absolutely not. That's crazy talk. There is no other market for Indian companies like the U.S. from a profitability and I don't want to say consanguinity, but from a vibe, there's nothing like it on the planet. So that's why I'm very confident that things are going to work out over time, because there's just no substitute.
Right. Russell, I want to come back to the American companies. You gave us an idea of how they think in a binary way. But can you give us an overall understanding of what sectors are they generally entering when it comes to doing business with India?
Well, to me, the big story and what makes it so significant now, this timing, is that the turn away from China is genuine. It's deep felt. American companies up vertically and horizontally have gotten the memo that you got to get out of China. And I think there's been a lot of coverage that it takes some time to do that. You have to decouple in different ways, and it's not a simple thing to redo international supply lines and relationships and things like that. And the Chinese are very, very, very good at what they're doing, and so that's been difficult. So I think particularly manufacturing has been looking. Manufacturers of all sorts have been looking to source from India, in particular, in a level and seriousness that hasn't happened really in 25 years. I've seen attempts, but an actual large scale movement, I would say people looking to source volumes of different, particularly machine parts and those sectors. Those are places that would never have looked at India before for a number of reasons, and now are forced to look elsewhere because of China. So I think that we're seeing not the simple switch, but a genuine movement. They face challenges, and we can talk about those, but that is really happening, and American business is really looking to India to be at least a much more serious partner in the sense that China has been for the last 25 years.
Right. And this is the reason why I wanted to speak to you, Russell, because, of course, it's not just India, but even states in India are now dealing with American companies directly. And one case that has really come to light is that from Andhra Pradesh. The state has claimed to secure $120 billion in investment from American companies. And this has happened in just a period of 16 months. Now, you're someone who guides American firms coming into India. How do you see what Andhra Pradesh is doing? Why is this number so significant?
Well, the increasing competition between and among states is really and with the center, and the interplay of those forces has really been the most significant development in Indian democracy in the last 25 or 30 years. The relationship between the center and states having the autonomy to carve out their own economic policies to an extent that was not possible before liberalization, and frankly was very difficult from the beginning. But that's something that American companies don't necessarily, they grasp that a bit now, but they don't really understand what a sea change that is and how subtle and to a certain extent fragile that center state relationships are. So, but it's very exciting and very important for anybody coming to India to look in a textured way at the competition between and among states.
Right. When it comes to Andhra Pradesh, they've secured massive funding from Google. They've gotten projects from Amazon. So how is it that these large American companies are looking at specifically Andhra Pradesh? Because I want to know, what is Andhra Pradesh doing right when it comes to securing these investments?
Well, I think one of the biggest stories is in the past 20, 25 years was Chandrababu Naidu putting Hyderabad and the undivided Andhra Pradesh on the map. He undertook meaningful development far in advance of the actual state of things. And so let's not speak about Gujarat right at the moment, but let's talk about Andhra Pradesh. And if you look at any other state, they've always been chasing a growing a train that's been leaving the station. And Andhra Pradesh under Chandrababu Naidu had a lot of foresight to basically set the table before the guests arrive. Everybody else has the guests come, the food's there, there's no cutlery, there's no bartan, there's nothing like that. And then they're like, oh my gosh, who could have anticipated? But Chandrababu Naidu demonstrably made inroads, decades ago. I was fortunate; those were innocent times in those days, and I remember we were at a luncheon at the Foreign Press Club in Delhi, and Chandrababu Naidu and a couple of his assistants came along, and we had interviews, and we had a very simple buffet lunch. And I recall he served himself very simply, like we're standing in queue, and I'm like, hey, do you want a maki ki roti, stuff like that. And a very simple guy, straight ahead, modest English, but comfortable with himself. And we had two or three Indian journalists, and we all sat on sofas and opposite him, and he spoke. and he said he was getting ground by the Indian journalists, and he said, "Hey, I was that kind of politician. I was the person doing dhoti sari. I was doing those things. I am my father-in-law's son-in-law." And he said, "But that's not going to work. That's not going to work anymore. I'm not going to do it, and I'm not going to tell you that it works. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to do this. We're going to move forward, and we'll do that." And the Indian journalists there were, quiet. They weren't used to hearing something like that. And I would say we're still not used to hearing something like that. But guess what? He went ahead and did it. He did digital government for services. I remember what a sensation it was when he put digital driver's licenses in,
Right.
all sorts of things. He did many other things. Like he said, "I'm an ordinary politician, but I'm also this other thing." And he put in infrastructure and created a plan for Hyderabad that I'm originally from Chicago, so we like building plans. We like people who think about things, about growth and the future. And he really put it into place. And I can't say that I'm aware of any other, in my experience throughout India, it's been absolutely the most successful and dramatic and positive economic growth that I've seen, and it was intentional. Of course, things happen, and nothing's perfect or anything. But he really pointed. He reminded me of the baseball player Babe Ruth. He pointed at right field and said, "I'm going to hit a home run over there," and he hit a triple. Let's call
Right.
it a triple. I may not say that. So when you look at that, you've got a state with a track record, a man, who's got a track record of taking a place and bringing it from one space to another place intentionally, improving things. And with the unfortunate division of the state, I won't get into it, but I think one of India's first, the division of a state that shared linguistic
Right.
sanguinity.
Yes.
It's the first time. So, and Chandrababu Naidu said, "Hey, that's fine. We'll do it again." And one of my favorite scenes from this last election was how grim-faced everybody was. You could go down and see all the BJP stalwarts, and they were pretty grim. And there was
Hmm.
Chandrababu Naidu with like the biggest shit-eating grin on his face. It was hilarious. He's like, "Dude, I am here and it's going to work." And you could almost hear the Caterpillar tractor spark up down south.
Hmm.
And he got to work. And my reports are that they got to work almost right away.
Right.
And so that makes it easier to do business with someone like that. He's they have a 25-year record of demonstrable progress, uh, treating outsiders fairly, figuring out problems as they go along. There's a, Vizag is not Hyderabad,
Hmm.
but it can be a better Vizag. And anybody who bets against Chandrababu Naidu is unlikely to recover their money.
Yes, let's talk about Chandrababu Naidu a little bit more, and not just him, even his son Nara Lokesh, who is also in the same party, Telugu Desam party.
Right.
They're both very, I would say, open-minded when it comes to business. In fact, Nara Lokesh has started phrasing things differently when it comes to dealing with companies. India has something called ease of doing business. That basically, it's not just an India thing; it's a global report. It tells how easy it is to get into countries to get into countries for companies, and how difficult it is to manage red tape. India was usually not making good numbers, and this was something that the Modi government has been trying to improve the rankings and ratings of India's ease of doing business. But then now you've got the Chandrababu Naidu family, and they're looking at things differently. They want to bring in something called the speed of doing business. Because for them right now, they say speed is of utmost essence. That is what is going to improve Andhra Pradesh for the next 5 to 10 years. So, how do you see this? How do you see this change in terminology when you speak to American companies about doing business here, especially with Andhra Pradesh?
So, um, and American how American business thinks about expansion and how they interpret these things, and then the reality of how things are in the ground
Hmm.
seldom intersect. And so, in this regard, so they're right in the sense of Andhra Pradesh is very plugged in, and now we have the second generation here, very plugged into what will give corporates comfort enough to risk, and I don't mean to be cynical about that. There about in describing the process, there is a way that this big corporate entity, which involves many people and interests and capital from all over the world, it cannot move just at will. And I would say that the change in terminology is the whatever delta between that and the reality in Andhra Pradesh. I have full confidence that that delta is as small as possible
Hmm.
under the circumstances, and that's really all you can ask for. Is like if a company comes in to a place that has challenges with infrastructure challenges, and India is still a developing country. There's no value in pretending that we're a little Switzerland over here. It's important to say, hey, we've got some issues, and we're addressing those issues, and here's how we'll address those issues. And when you deal with a state government that is on board with that idea and partnering in terms of that, as opposed to taking umbrage if you bring a problem to them, if you bring an issue to them, they 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 look at it, and you're looking at the same pile of dirt and say, let's get shoveling. And I think American companies will really respond to that. I think any companies will respond to that. But I think the clear cut, straightforward nature of that from the Naidus is really going to resonate with American companies. Now, I'd like to see uh, U.S. companies that don't necessarily know anything about India and have no personal association. I'd really like to see that, but let's start with where we are and move on from there. But I find this language not simply the language. Uh, one thing I haven't heard them say is the Andhra Pradesh story, or the growth story of Andhra Pradesh. I personally hate that because I don't want fairy tales. I don't want a story. There's a real feeling in Delhi that's very expressed that India is really doing phenomenally well. Things are terrific here, but we just don't present things well. We just don't market ourselves well. Uh, that's not true, and there are many. One could have a discussion about that. It's really fun to talk about that. But this India growth story, I seldom, if ever, hear anything like that out of the folks from Andhra Pradesh. And I have to say that goes down to various ministries and different levels of government there, because I was in Bangalore a couple of weeks ago for an electronics manufacturing convention and spoke with the people from Andhra Pradesh, and they're in their 30s, right? And so I've been in India like almost as long as they've been alive, and they don't know, they don't remember a young Chandrababu Naidu, and the way they approached questions, the way they accepted questions, was just really refreshing. It's distinctive in the country, frankly.
So can you briefly tell us how was Chandrababu Naidu like 20 years ago to now? Because you've seen him, you've interacted with him, and you've got a lot of stories to tell. But I mean, he keeps coming back. People like him. So how has he evolved in not just the Andhra Pradesh story, but in the India story as well.
So
And I'm using and I'm using what you were not in favor of, but I guess for a global audience, this is how it would make sense.
well, I'm not really in a position to comment on a man's life in that sort of fashion, and I can only say externally and with friends and having spent a great deal of time down in the state and with people who have operated at a high level. But I can say that his message has been consistent in terms of focusing on the substantive. He what struck me is that how honest he was sitting on a sofa near Pragati Maidan. He said, "Look, I'm a politician. I'm a son-in-law. I'm that guy. I do normal things," and I said that. But we're going to do these other things, and here's how we're going to do it, because the other things don't work, and we want it to work. We want it to work for our state, and he made that work. And his enthusiasm, his focus, his ability to bring people along, I think it inspires others. I think, and there's no way to do that genuinely over time except through results. I think people have seen the development there. They've seen him in action over time, and they can decide this is a guy who is interesting in getting things done that will benefit many more people than outside his circle. And all I can say is we drive on roads. We've seen the physical manifestation of what he said, and I'm super excited to see that, and have every reason to think that his son is focused in the same way. And people in India will tell you. They know the difference between what is promised and what's there. It's a real vibrant democracy in that way, and I think that in Chandrababu Naidu we've had someone who over time has said, "I will do X," and he's tried to do X over time, and that's borne fruit for his state, and people are willing to give him the mandate to do that again, and now his son. So I'm super excited. I feel privileged to have seen that journey and to experience it, and I'm very hopeful for it.
Yeah. Russell, you've been here for more than 2 decades, and for a long time, it was states like Tamil Nadu, it was states like Gujarat, Karnataka that were dominating the headlines, especially when it came to FDI, large conglomerates coming into India and setting up shop. That has now changed. It's a lot of it is going to Andhra Pradesh. And how do you see this happening? Is it just because of Chandrababu Naidu? Is it because of his relationship with the government in the center? Or do you think states like Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka had basically, well, they're full of opportunities, but it's plateaued. And now companies are looking for new avenues, new ventures, and that is how Andhra Pradesh is coming up.
So, I mean, Rohan, you're aware, India is a very large country with wildly different conditions in different states, and the idea that there's only one place to go really was never true. And simply the story that punctuated again the Indian growth story that perhaps was portrayed outside, and it's not saying anything against any of these other states. Although I will have discuss. I'm planning on talking about the different states and who should go where and what you should consider, and you should do that. That should be a highly textured engagement. But it says nothing bad about other states that you're hearing more about other states coming up. So, and I would say I'd have to go back to resort to statistics, but I would say Andhra Pradesh has not been lagging in that regard. There's one of the differentiators is theoretically, like at the beginning of Bangalore as a big hub, there was always a question. There was sort of like instead of like the ordinary person or common person or Am Admi or something, there was the technically trained young woman from like Andheri East.
Hmm.
Would she move there? Would she feel comfortable moving from Andheri East to Bangalore? Would she feel comfortable going to Hyderabad? Would she feel comfortable going to Chennai? And that's a very imprecise question, but that was sort of the way that HR people spoke to me about it, and recruiters. And the answer for Bangalore became yes, of course, right away. Chennai was no, unless she's Tamil, I'm not going to go, and
Yeah.
that's still probably the case. Hyderabad has shifted to, well, yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
you can do that. Number one of the advantages Hyderabad has, and unfortunately over Vizag, is like you can get by with Hindi in Hyderabad,
Hmm.
um, and that itself makes it a lot easier to navigate uh, for people from all over the country without getting into language wars or something. Just like the girl from Andheri lands, can she get a taxi? Can she rent a house? Can she do those things? She doesn't have to be Telugu uh, fluent from day one, and that was always the advantage. You have these places that were sort of free ports. So we have to see socially, can Vizag come up the same way? Can the truncated Andhra Pradesh, can it come up socially? So that's really one of the questions. So rather about this state has this policy, this state has that policy. It's like, can you get that woman, that talented woman from Pune or from Andheri East? Will she go there? Will her parents let her go there? And that's really how things are moving. It's a little different than it was before, but not very different.
Yeah. Russell, let's get it. Let's get the perspective of American companies that are coming in. We've got Google, which has promised to establish a data center in Andhra Pradesh. We've also got ArcelorMittal saying they will set up steel plants. Now, when these large, I would say, mega projects are promised, are they always delivered, or is there always a legal or a bureaucratic issue that prevents these projects from taking shape?
Well, these large projects are really welcome. I mean, we need a little bit of good news during these tariff wars, and we need a little bit of momentum to be reestablished. So these are like really positive things to hear about, and um, I because the target is Andhra Pradesh, because of the track record there and the nature of the persons involved, there's a lot of logic and rationality behind these projects. These are not, um, hydroelectric dams or something like that. These are hard business decisions, um, and to a certain extent, reflective of the many strengths of like Vizag. Of If you look at that, you've got a port.
Hmm.
Vizag's Vishakhapatnam's a terrific port that will come up. It's right on the sea. It makes the planned links that have been announced with Google, the upgradation of that. It makes it all much easier to be on that side. So there's a lot of logic as opposed to I don't know puffery in these, and so and they come at a sort of a not darkish time, but a grudging time where things are not great internationally, commercially at all. But these are
Hmm.
projects that I fully expect them to come up. This timeline, that timeline, something like that. But I don't expect these MOUs to vaporize at all.
Right. Well, Russell, I guess we'll just keep watching Andhra Pradesh's investment story and how the state grows with the current party. Thank you very much for your insights and for speaking to us. And I'll have to call you back again because there's so much that we can talk about when it comes to America and India doing business together.
Such a pleasure. I'm super hopeful. Let me just wrap by saying I think this is the most promising time in the India-U.S. Economic relationship, almost because things are bad right now. You don't like a couple that doesn't want to stay together. They don't argue about, what pizza they're going to order. This is just like minor stuff. I think that there are so many salutary trends that are coming together that all that the Indian bureaucracy has to do is just say yes to the future, and American business needs to come over and just say, let's give it a go and do this with the same tenacity and pioneering spirit that they did in China 25 years ago. And I think we're going to the next 20 years in India are just going to be explosive for the U.S.-India business relationship in a positive sense.
Well, on that optimistic note, thank you so much, Russell, for speaking to Fair Observer.
My pleasure. Take care.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.